So can you tell maybe some of the differences between Jewish Zionism and Christian Zionism? Like, are they both predicting some type of end time? You know, because we talk
Yeah,
about the Zionists, they have this idea of God's on their side, that there's
right,
it's an apocalyptic type of
right.
thinking. Is that the same as Christian Zionists? Just like what you're
Yeah,
saying, they're going to
well,
rebuild the temple, the Antichrist, all this stuff,
right.
Armageddon.
Well, okay, well, there is, actually, it's kind of, I'm struck by how there is a kind of a confluence. Because again, as I was saying with dispensationalism, the,
But so can you explain that concept again, real quick? Dispensationalism was
okay,
so
well,
there's
a
an in
dispensation,
between.
okay, right. A dispensation, again, is, I th you could define it as kind of a stage in the relationship between God and man. So, for example, you can say, well, before the fall in the garden, there was one particular kind of relationship between God and man, between God and Adam and Eve, right? And after the fall, things changed. And then we had this long period. This is, according to traditional Christian understanding, which doesn't conflict with the dispensationalists' understanding. And then, but then when Christ came, he was the Messiah that had been that the prophets had been telling their people about over the centuries, the Messiah that they were longing for, that they were expecting. According to the Christians, he was the Messiah. He was the fulfillment of those promises, and with that fulfillment of that promise, a new relationship was established between man and God, right? And so we have the new covenant, and the traditional understanding is there. Okay, the old covenant, this particular relationship between God and the Jews ended, and there's a new one. Okay, that particular, but with the dispensationalists, this is the key thing, is that they say it didn't end there, and that they're actually kind of, we had them on
Yeah,
parallel
okay.
tracks. Okay, now God deals with the Christians this way, and then, but he has these special prophecies for the Jews. So there is sort of an overlap. It's not, the end times that the dispensationalists have worked out would, shares. I couldn't get into into the weeds here of like the controversy, exactly what different sects of Judaism think, but they do expect a Messiah. For them, that Messiah isn't Jesus. It's not the second coming. It's that they say the Messiah hasn't come, but that he will. Many of them, anyway. I can't speak for all Jews, obviously, but many of them, see him as a great king who would protect them, and he would rule in Jerusalem, in the way that the Christian Zionists see it. So there's sort of a confluence of thinking, because they are saying, okay, yeah, God still has a special relationship with the Jews, and so the Jews and Christians actually end up working together on, for example, on this whole question of the rebuilding of the third temple. Okay, there was a temple. It was, the central temple of Judaism that was destroyed, I think, by the Babylonians, approximately 500 BC. Eventually it was rebuilt, but then that was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. And it's never been rebuilt. So they're waiting for the third temple. And the idea is, maybe when the third temple is rebuilt, then we'll be ready for the Messiah. And both Christian Zionists and certain Jews, I'm not going to speak for all of them, have the same idea, and they actually have working together to prepare the way for the rebuilding of the third temple. There are groups within Israel that are that are dedicated to this and are trying to bring this about. The problem is that the site of the third temple is where the Dome of the Rock is. That's a mosque, which is very holy to
Al-Aqsa.
the Muslim. Yeah, and Al-Aqsa is actually just across the plaza from
Oh, okay.
the Dome of the Rock. There are two mosques. And sometimes they're kind of used, Al-Aqsa is used to describe the whole complex. There are two mosques in a plaza between them. And yeah, they would have to so the problem is that to rebuild the third temple, they would have to tear down Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is like
How do they know for certain that it's right there? Like, I mean,
Actually,
we've both been to Jerusalem. I've been to the Wailing Wall. You know, I've been to Al-Aqsa. So isn't it the way the wall? Isn't that the foundation of the temple?
Well, the wall, that's just part of it. Okay, so it was, when the second temple was built, it was built and then expanded. Walls were built around it. But when the Romans raised it to the ground, they left very little, but they did leave part of the wall. And that's the Wailing Wall, which is not very far from, the Dome of the Rock. And I think there's actually really not much of a question about it, that archaeologists agree in general. Yeah, it was where the Dome of the Rock is right now.
Okay, so they have to build it exactly. Couldn't they do let's put them next to each other, make it a little bit smaller, and squeeze
right? Well, there actually has been talk about that. I mean, there actually is maybe we could just build it in the plaza between,
don't destroy Al-Aqsa.
Yeah, but in general, these people and think it has to be there, and again, so they.
Well, when was Al-Aqsa built? How old is that?
Okay, yeah, it escapes me. It's one of the, I'm just guessing that it was around, I know that I'll tell you what, Al-Aqsa is built on the site where, the Prophet Muhammad was believed to have kind of landed after being supernaturally transported from I'm actually not quite sure, but he was towards he was carried there by God, and he landed. That's where he alighted, and then I think it was the next day or shortly thereafter, that he rose up to heaven. That God carried him up to heaven, and they say that God carried him up to heaven from that place where the Dome of the Rock. The mosque now stands, and where the second temple used to be.
It's really fascinating.
So they're approximately, one of them I think is is from before the 1000 AD, and the other one is after 1000 AD, but not by much. Maybe the 13th century. It was rebuilt after, some damage. It had suffered some damage. I just can't remember the exact dates, but they're both very ancient.
Yeah, it's really interesting how you have all these religions Islam and Judaism and Christianity, they're all related. They're like cousins in a way.
So.
That's, and you see that when you're in Jerusalem, it's divided into those four quarters. Right. You got the Muslim quarter, you got the Jewish quarter, you got I guess the Armenian quarter has their own one for some reason. And then, that's Christian quarter.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So,
our Armenians, of course, are Christians too. But, though all of them are being pushed out, by Israeli Jews. And then, just to make things even more complicated, it's just that, the Muslims have their own vision of the end times, and they see Jesus as coming back as the Messiah. They don't believe that he's the Son of God, but they believe that he is the Messiah, that he will return, and that he will defeat a Jewish Antichrist. So that makes things even more complicated there.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just like if Al-Aqsa Mosque is torn down, as there have long been groups within Israel that want to do this, and they've been, the Israeli government has tried to suppress them, and there are sometimes when they found them tunneling under, ready to place some explosives, or they caught them in the act. They watch them very carefully because they understand that just all hell could break loose, but. That's the old Israel. Now we have people, I think, even in the ruling coalition that have ties, to these temple fanatics. That all of Israel is moved in that direction. And, there's still, I think, there's the government still doesn't want to take these steps, but we may come to the point in the not too distant future where. They decide to do it, and maybe Netanyahu, he himself is secular, but he may calculate that, hey, let's just blow up the whole place and get the Americans involved and whatever, and destroy Iran, and it could happen.
How secular really is he? Do you think he believes at all a little bit in this sort of protection from God and Armageddon?
They were saying that. Right,
he's acting like he has,
right. Well,
maybe that cloak of protection is the United States, not God.
Right. No, occasionally he quotes the Bible or whatever, but he's never shown really any interest in living any kind of pious behavior. I mean, occasionally, like a lot of American politicians, he'll show up at a service or he'll wear a yarmulke or whatever. But that's everybody seems to agree that he's a thoroughly secular man.